if anyone feels like, or they're wondering if, is what I'm dealing with potentially burnout, like, instead of just telling yourself you're going to power through, like, could you please ask someone to take a look at things with you, like gently and kindly take a look at what might be contributing before you just sort of decide, like, I guess I just have to keep going.
This episode is sponsored by TherapyNotes, therapynotes.com. Be sure and check them out, and be sure and use the promo code Gordon, Gordon, and you can try them out for 2 months for free. Over 15 years ago, when I started my private practice, I had to learn a lot, and most of it the hard way, and I don't think you need to do the same. Hi, I'm Gordon Brewer, a licensed psychotherapist, and welcome to the Practice of Therapy podcast, part of the Psychcraft network of podcasts. Join me in this journey of discovery as we have conversations with other leaders and professionals in both the mental and allied health fields. Join us as we explore both the business and clinical sides of running a private practice. Welcome to the podcast. I'm Gordon Brewer, and this is episode number 389 of the Practice of Therapy podcast. So glad you've joined me in this journey, and hope you'll take time to follow us wherever you might be listening to the podcast. Looking forward to you hearing my guest today, Marie Fang. And Marie and I jump into this whole topic of therapist burnout. Has that ever happened to you? I'm sitting here raising my hand as we talk about this, but yes, it's an important topic. And I think there's a lot of different reasons that we can feel burned out and just feel overwhelmed in our practice. And so Marie and I dive into this, and you get to hear some of her ideas around all of this. One of the things, just thinking about burnout, one of the things that, at least for me, that I've found over the years that I've been doing this is just the importance of having a community that you can lean on. We talk about community a lot particularly on this podcast, but one of the things that I think is important is to have trusted peers and colleagues that you can kind of lean on and bounce ideas off of, and just, for lack of a better term, have a shoulder to cry on when things are getting tough. And also, having mentors and people that can maybe have already done some of the hard stuff already that can kind of guide you through that. And so, one of the things that I love doing is working with other therapists around these different topics. And so love for you to go check out over at practiceoftherapy.com some of the ways in which I work with people, either through consulting or the different communities that I've established. So be sure to check that out. Also, one of the things I'd love for you to hear more about is the Psychcraft network. And you're going to get to hear from one of the people that is part of that network that I started a couple of years ago, or it's probably longer ago. 2022, I started that. So it's hard to believe it's been around that long. But yeah, anyway, love for you to check it out at psychcraftnetwork.com. And also, real quickly, before we get to my conversation with Marie, love for you to hear from our sponsor of the podcast, TherapyNotes.
Hey there. Are you searching for answers and clarity on your mental health journey? Well, I've got the podcast just for you. Welcome to Finding Your Way Through Therapy, a podcast that's like having a heartfelt conversation with a trusted friend and who understands what you're going through. I'm your host, Steve Biesel, a therapist and proud member of the Psychcraft network. Finding Your Way Through Therapy is a safe space where we openly explore the emotional complexities of mental health. From busting common myths to sharing actionable advice, we'll navigate this journey together through solo episodes as well as special guests. Discover your inner strength, resilience, and hope as we explore topics like self-care, building healthy relationships, cognitive behavioral therapy, and overcoming challenges. You'll come away with a renewed sense of self and the tools to create a life filled with fulfillment and well-being. So join me on Finding Your Way Through Therapy as we become your companion on this deeply personal journey. I am part of the PsychCraft Network and truly enjoy all the episodes. And back to your regular scheduled programming.
Rachel here with a quick shout out to TherapyNotes, the EHR that Gordon uses and loves for running his group practice. If you've ever been looking for a solid, all-in-one platform to manage your notes, scheduling, billing, and even secure client messaging, this is it. Gordon's been using TherapyNotes for years, and it's honestly made a huge difference in how smooth things run behind the scenes. He's always saying how it saves him time and keeps everything organized, and as a practice owner, that's huge. And get this, they've just rolled out Therapy Fuel, which is an amazing suite of AI tools that help write your notes faster. You can generate progress notes from session summaries or even from transcriptions. You can also create contact notes straight from secure messages and automatically summarize client history forms. Basically, it's like having a little documentation assistant built right in. Plus, TherapyNotes is always adding new features like automated payments, secondary insurance billing, and a growing library of outcome measures. And if you ever get stuck, their customer service is phenomenal. Seriously, you can call or email 24/7 and talk to someone who actually knows what they're doing. So, if you've ever been thinking about switching or just getting started, now's a great time. Head over to therapynotes.com, click Start My Free Trial, and use the promo code GORDON to get 2 months free. All right, back to the show.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome again to the podcast. And I'm so thrilled to have today Marie Fang. Marie, thanks for coming and thanks for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I was so excited that you invited me on, and I'm looking forward to seeing what we end up talking about.
Yes, it's always fun, I think, just to meet new people and have new conversations. But Marie, as I start with everyone, why don't you tell folks a little more about yourself and how you've landed where you've landed?
Yeah, I know it's one of those big questions where it's like, which part of where I've landed, but I'll try to, give the capsule version, maybe a little bit about how I became a therapist and how I got to here. I ended up entering the field. I decided I was going to be a therapist when I was 14 because I had severe panic disorder at the time and moved through it, overcame it, and thought it was amazing and incredible to just see how our minds can be so influenced. So I was locked in at 14, no looking back, like finished graduate school at 25 and started my private practice. And so I've been in private practice for 12 or 13 years now. And I found it incredibly difficult to figure out how to start a private practice. Especially there's so much more information now. You're here. I love it. There's more information now. Doesn't mean that it's necessarily always easy, but the baseline information just wasn't even there. Like, okay, how do people find me? I send out snail mail flyers in the mail. Like, I don't know how to do this. So I found myself kind of figuring it out as I went. And then as I started having more friends start in private practice, they'd get these snags, they'd hit the same snags. And so I'd say, oh, well, no need for you to do this over again. Here's some of the stuff I've been learning. And then I just keep kind of passing it along, seeing where they get stuck, and then kind of shifting to kind of adapt to everybody. And after a while, I just thought, we should just share this information. It should be more available. So I started Private Practice Skills in 2018, which feels like a long time ago now, where I started by teaching therapists about private practice, and then the genuine just skills for how do you do private practice, the parts outside of the clinical work that we've already learned. And now over time, it's kind of shifted, and I speak more towards kind of aspects of the field in general that I feel like need more airtime, maybe aren't getting talked about enough, things that sort of humanize the experience of being a therapist, because, the skills on starting a private practice, I've spoken about them. There's others like yourself and many others who are sharing those tools. So I've kind of shifted over the years to really just speak about whatever I feel like talking about.
Sure, sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I know one of the things that we talked about, or just kind of picked a topic, as we do a lot of times with podcasts, is just about therapist burnout. And I think I think just having been in private practice, the length of time that I've been in it, and I'm just really aged myself if I disclose that, but it's on the it's on the high side of 18 years. So I mean, I've been
It's
doing it a
lovely.
while. Yeah. So, but you do reach places where you just get tired of it, or just get burned out, or it just feels overwhelming at times. And I know you've done some work with people around that. And so what have you learned so far about that whole topic?
Oh, goodness. Yeah. I mean, where do we start? I think one thing that comes to mind and why it's a topic that interests me to talk about is not just because it's so common, but I think also like the nuance and the depth behind like what can contribute to burnout is something that maybe we don't always talk about. I think everyone has a clear sense of like if we work way more hours than our body is able to work, like that's not going to be sustainable over time.
Hmm.
Eventually, we're going to see ourselves decline, burnout, et cetera. Of course, we kind of cognitively understand that, but that there's variables about the work that we do that we don't always, even within ourselves, acknowledge as part of our work. That time that you're spending at 8 p.m. going back in your mind and thinking like, wait, was that the right intervention with that client? And oh no, next time, should I check in with my consult group? And, we have our internal dialogue. And a lot of times we're working in our brains, even when we're not quote unquote working, sitting with a client or even writing notes and things like that. And so I think it's really important to kind of take a look at and acknowledge all the different ways that we are working. We're giving emotional energy. We are writing notes, even though those aren't
Hmm.
hours that we get to count most of the time as work hours,
Hmm.
quote unquote, but they are.
Hmm.
And,
Yeah.
the time you spend kind of double checking that textbook or, going back and revisiting a training or that's all part of our efforts. And we don't always talk about those things. So I like to just kind of give it airtime so that people at least can assess kind of more realistically, like how much am I actually working and how much
Hmm.
energy output am I giving towards my work here? And it's not always just like how many clients am I seeing per week?
Hmm. Right, right. Well, I think I think part of it has a lot to do with kind of your sometimes your personality of how you tend to work on things. And I think one of the things I know from my own experiences is that you get into this kind of routine about how you do things and how things are structured in your practice and all of that sort of thing. And I think it's helpful at times to kind of look at that part of it and begin to make some changes in the way that we do our do our systems and processes and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not sure if this is what you're touching on. I guess this could mean a lot of different things, but like I'm
Yeah.
even thinking about how like AI is rolling out more and more, which is
Yes.
both
Yeah.
terrifying, but also
Yeah.
fascinating. Like there's a lot of things that maybe we had to spend a lot more time on before that we might be able to kind of reevaluate and say, like, do I need to spend all this time? Or sometimes it's outsourcing things. Like if you're getting lost in, any admin type task related to your
Right.
practice,
Right.
is this something that would help you to outsource, which, usually costs some money, but then you get something back also.
Right.
So I think that, I don't know if that's kind of what you're getting at, but that's kind of
Yeah.
where my
Yeah.
mind went when you said that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's one of the things too, when I think about burnout is that it's not the stuff that we enjoy doing that it creates the burnout. It's the stuff we don't enjoy doing
Yeah.
that I think creates that for ourselves. But you mentioned outsourcing, and I know a lot of times people newer to private practice have difficulty with that. You want to say something about that as far as maybe a mindset change with some of that?
Yeah. Well, first I want to empathize, like the having difficulty with that. It's sort of like, well, yeah, if everything we outsourced was completely free, then I imagine
Hmm.
at least some good chunk of the people who are hesitant might say, oh, okay, well, if it's free, that sounds awesome, right? So it's,
Uh-huh.
ooh, I'm gonna feel that in my bank account. Maybe you're just starting up. or, even if you're not just starting out, but it's like, ooh, I could use that money. I want to keep it in my pocket. And so, I mean, sometimes it can be helpful to like break down the actual hour, like how much time are you spending on this admin task that you hate? And how much do you charge per client session? If you outsource that, even though it's going to cost you this much, per hour or a month or whatever it is, might you potentially still get that money back? And also similar to like we might say other things that are important to us cost money, like going to see a therapist ourselves costs us money, but hopefully I sure hope we're getting something back, right? So if it feels like this is worth, my reduced stress levels or this thing that now I'm so worried about staying on top of this admin task that I don't have as much time with my family or these other personal values of mine that, I'm more grumpy when I'm showing up for those things. So I stayed up late working on this thing and now, I have trouble getting out of bed and get my kids to school or whatever it is.
Right.
So it's helpful to take, I think, kind of a more holistic approach of like, if I paid this money, then am I going to gain at least that much value back?
Yes.
But
yes,
yeah, absolutely. You have to evaluate it in your budget because you can't just pay for it. Most of us probably aren't going to just pay for every single thing to be done for us either.
Right. Yeah, it's that whole return on investment kind of thing. And like you alluded to, Marie, is that if you were to outsource a particular aspect of your practice of something that is just kind of mundane and really evaluating, okay, somebody else could do this instead of me. If that opens up another appointment slot for you, or for example, that pays for itself, or if you get a new client because someone was able to return the call quicker than you were able to return the call, again, you get your money back on that as well. Yeah.
Well, and I think it is both that the return on investment, but there's always that fear of like, am I going to have the return on investment? So there's that moment where, if you've been doing it for a couple of years, you say, oh, I got my return on investment, no brainer. But before you've actually stepped out and spent that money or tried out this thing that's going to cost you something, hopefully to streamline your practice, you don't know yet if it's going to work. So all you know that is guaranteed is it's going to cost you some money and maybe some time, or if you're onboarding someone to do admin for you, it's going to cost you something. You don't know if it's going to pay off. So I just want to validate, like it's hard to make that step and say, okay, I'm willing to take that leap. So maybe a mindset too might be like, I'm willing to try this out for X amount of time. I'm going to try this for 3 months or 6 months. And if it doesn't work out, I did sink some money into it, but if it does work out, then great. But I don't have to, commit forever to this thing that might not work, but try a run, give it a test drive and collect some data about it, see if it's helpful.
Yeah, that's great. So what are maybe some other things that come to mind for you, Marie, around just burnout and just when, running a practice gets hard, I guess?
Yeah, I have so many thoughts. So I see this come up a lot too, where therapists will reach burnout levels and it can feel so impossible to come out of the burnout that then the natural kind of next question is, is this the right profession for me? And of course, I think that should be available on the table of questions that say, at any point, no one ever should feel trapped in this profession. And I think that's also kind of like a signal more of just how burnt out, how tired, how exhausted somebody is of like, I'm fantasizing about getting out, right? But sometimes it can be helpful to ask more nuanced questions about like what else might be not working. And it's quite common that I'll hear from folks that maybe there's something about the type of work that they're doing, or even maybe the type of workplace that they're in, whether even like if you're in a solo practice, or maybe it's that you're working from home, but you're so isolated. And so speaking of ROI, return on it costs money to rent an office, but here I'm doing it, right? Because I have colleagues that I run into in the hallway. And, there could be any number of variables aside from just, is this the profession for me or not, that might be contributing. So I think it could be really helpful, whether it's with consult group or your own therapist or supervisor, or even just loved ones, to kind of like sit down and evaluate, like, what are the different aspects of the work that I do? What do each of these cost me? And are any of them variables that I could potentially consider changing to see if that helps me feel better. And sometimes it's, I'm going to pivot from, I've been working with couples, but then I went through my own messy divorce. And so now maybe it's going to help me and my mental well-being to pivot. I'm going to work with individuals now, at least for a season. And that's an example, right, of just letting yourself think outside the box and see if there's details about the work that you're doing that might be contributing to that exhaustion, that burnout.
Yeah. And I think it's, one of the things that I think you're alluding to is the importance of having supports in place around you in your practice. Of in whatever form that looks like, whether it's a mastermind group or whether it's like you said, a consult group that you meet with regularly, other colleagues that can understand what it's like in the on the front lines, if you will, of being in a therapy practice.
Tess joined the plus side and found her personalized insurance policy with AAA. They did all the work and found the coverage and price that worked for her, which means Tess has time to brave the world of trumpet playing. And then there's Kate, who decided to brave the world of insurance by herself.
Please hold.
On the plus side, get more from insurance with AAA. Go to AAA.com/insurance. Product options may vary by state and participant. Visit AAA.com/details for more information.
At ShopRite, we are farm fresh here. For over 50 years, we've proudly supported the family-owned farms who bring us their locally grown farm fresh produce. From family-owned farms to our family-owned stores to you. ShopRite, we are here.
Yes, that I agree so much. And I know it also can be so challenging. That's a question I hear so much. Like, how do you find people? And so, I mean, I can't answer that for each individual person, but it is a deeply cherished find. And it is that space where a place like a podcast like this, we can name these sort of high level categories that come up, but it's really in the consult groups and those sort of like safe spaces where, whether it's another therapist saying this to me or me saying this to another therapist, and the spaces where somebody's going like, wait, hold on. Like, there was a should, and I feel like I should be able to see this many clients, or I should be able to fill in the blank. And we carry these things and we don't even hear ourselves saying it about ourselves. And it takes somebody individually listening to our story and hopefully gently and lovingly, but like calling it out and saying, whoa, wait, hold on. There's something you said there that's not quite adding up. That you might not ever quite hear it that way, just kind of consuming other media that's not personalized, where it's just like how therapy is different than a self-help book.
There's a book I've been listening to lately, and I want to get the title correct. It's by Isra Nasir, and the book is called Toxic Productivity. And it's it really kind of speaks to that, what you said earlier about the shoulds and ought tos, and we can very quickly lay on ourselves this idea about, okay, you have to be seeing so many clients, or you have to be producing so much work, just all of that kind of thing that just we tend to live with. And I think if we can be a little kinder to ourselves and give ourselves a little grace around things, we can take a lot of pressure off of ourselves.
Yes. I love that framework, and maybe changing the question of, rather than it being whatever some gold standard is that somebody has in their mind, I should see this many clients, or sometimes it's, I should offer a sliding scale that goes down this far, so therefore now I have to see more clients in order to, whatever the gold standard is that we're trying to get ourselves to meet. Or maybe maybe we're not in private practice, maybe we're working for somebody else and they have that gold standard, but it might be more helpful to shift it and let the gold standard be like, okay, how much is my capacity? And it might be different than my therapist buddy over here who is totally good seeing 30 clients a week. Maybe my capacity is 12. And how can I make sure I build a career that fits me, and just be more accepting that you are you, and it's okay. And a gift, really. This is why I love private practice. You can build it exactly the way that you want it. That's the whole, to me at least, the whole point of why I love being in private practice is, okay, I can't see 30 clients a week and be a good mom. And I think
Right.
And there's no need to force it. I can just create the
Right.
pathway that fits me well. And then I'm going to be a nicer therapist too. And I'm going to be more
Mm-hmm.
on top of all of the tasks that come with it and enjoy it more. So
Sure.
that shift from like whatever the gold standard people think is, I don't know where it comes from, but we write these stories in our minds to shift it towards like, what's my capacity? What aligns with my needs and values and skills and all of that? And can we build the thing to fit that and
Sure.
accept and embrace that is a valuable offering into
Right.
the world?
Yeah.
Hard to
It's
do that.
Yeah, it is. It's always easier said than done. I mean,
Yes.
it's just that whole more is better kind of mentality
Yeah.
of getting away from that. Yeah. So, well, to shift gears a little bit, Marie, what in your working with other therapists that are in private practice or going into private practice, what do you find are kind of the the topics or the issues that you see most people really struggle with the most?
Oh, wow.
And
There's
I'm
a
sure there's
list
a
that
lot.
comes to
Yeah.
mind. But yeah, I mean, I could summarize the list with that same framework of like, I'm supposed to do things a certain way, whether it's
Hmm.
it could be anything in the supposed to, right? Sometimes I hear I'm
Hmm.
supposed to either accept insurance, or I'm supposed to be only cash pay, or I'm supposed to market myself on social media and put my face on a video, or I'm supposed to build my website to look a certain way. But
Hmm.
there's a list of like I should do it a certain way, and then either
Hmm.
feeling overwhelmed by it, so then it's really difficult to kind of really execute the plan, or you end up building this thing that feels like it doesn't quite align with who you are. And then that kind of comes back to the burnout again, right? I mean, you're
Right.
giving
Right.
your energy towards something that doesn't quite line up with something that feels authentic or that it aligns with your values. Then we're giving our energy to a space
Hmm.
where it doesn't fill us up. It costs us a lot.
Right.
So that
Right.
sort of
Yeah.
categorically, I guess, what I end up hearing a lot of like I need
Yeah.
to do it a certain way, and then that costing
Right.
people a lot.
Yeah, yeah, and that's one of the things that I hear in the people that I've worked with as well is they get caught up on, okay, I need to do it a certain way or I have to do it the
Yeah.
correct way. And the thing is that there's, dozens, if not hundreds of ways to do different
Oh,
things,
yes.
and none of them is wrong. Yeah,
Yeah,
that can be kind of overwhelming itself. Yeah.
sure. It
Yeah.
is arguably more work to get to know ourselves and then build something that fits us. I mean, if we were to imagine like the things that are working for me, I imagine probably are not the best fit for most people. Like, why don't you just spend 20 hours a week building a YouTube channel?
Yeah.
And having this whole like side
Yeah.
business. Well, most people,
Yeah.
I don't expect that most people are going to want to do. It's not going to be a good fit, but it's working great for me and I love it, right? So it's more work to sort of say, okay, let's get to know you and you might have to try out some stuff and feel sort of like, okay, that wasn't it, and to kind of sort of feel like you're
Hmm.
failing at a few different things to get to know, okay, what's a good fit for me? Like going to the store and trying on the clothes rather than, buying the same outfit in the same size
Right.
as everybody else kind of thing.
Right. Right.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
more
Yeah.
effort.
Yeah. It's interesting how we can kind of get locked into certain mindsets of, just doing things a certain way, but there's,
Yeah.
any number of ways that we can approach most of the things that we do in our in our practice. One example that comes to mind for me is, I just think about bookkeeping, as
Hmm.
far as, putting stuff into QuickBooks and all that sort of thing. And somebody commented to me one time, says, Gordon, why don't you just hire that out? Why don't you outsource that? And I said, well, part of the reason is I enjoy doing it. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, it's something I enjoy playing around with and looking at
Hmm.
and that kind of thing. And so I'm going to continue to do it myself, even though
Yeah.
somebody's telling me I should or ought
Yes.
to do it another way. I think you do things in the way that best fit you.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's where it's tricky. There's no blanket advice, or it's so good that you can outsource your books, and so many people are going to find that so helpful. And it's good that you know about yourself that you like to do it yourself. And I'm the same way too. I still
All
have,
right.
for both businesses or keeping track of my own bookkeeping, because that really helps me now. Then I catch that like, oh, I have this thing I've been paying for monthly. I haven't used it in a year or so,
Right.
Or, oh, my numbers are dropping. So let me kind of see if I want to make an adjustment. So, but everybody's different. That's what's so beautiful. I think that we all have our own way. That means that you're going to be a better fit for some clients that I personally would probably really struggle to work with, or they might not like working with me.
Right.
And that's all part of it. We're all so different that's why it works like that.
Sure. Well, tell folks about your YouTube channel and the things that you're doing just with your consulting and that kind of thing, Marie.
Yeah. It does sort of feel like I'm in this point now where I just kind of make stuff that I feel like making. So I don't necessarily have like a come follow me for these specific tools at this point. I mean, you can find the archives of all my tools that I think can still be relevant, though maybe cringeworthy on some of the older ones. I don't know. But I'm on YouTube. I post videos every week. My handle is called Private Practice Skills. And lately, at least, I'll just say lately, I've been focusing more on like therapist well-being, or just calling out aspects of our profession that at least aspects of how I was taught about our profession that I at least want to be able to ask questions about or call into question. So those are some of the like categories of topics that I might be touching on. And I'm floating around in other spaces. Like I release the episodes as the longer versions as a podcast. And sometimes if I feel like it, I post on Instagram. So that's kind of what I'm up to lately. But I don't have any specific like consulting or one-on-one type things that I'm offering at the moment. That's kind of been the good fit for me.
Well, that's good. That's good. And if you were to, I love the titles, Private Practice Skills. What would you say, and I don't want to put you on the spot, what would you say would be maybe the top 5 skills any private practice owner might need to have?
Yeah. I mean, this is like a category of skills. Maybe the top 5 live in here. But I'm thinking of branding when you mentioned that first. So branding, which really comes back to the same stuff we've just been talking about, like knowing who you are, who is it that you serve? Why is that important to you? That those are all important to know from a clinical perspective, and also private practice. We're thinking from a business point of view. You need people to find you and then decide to book with you and then stay with you. That those are really important skills to understand. And unfortunately, often aren't taught in grad school. At least back in my day, they weren't taught in graduate school at all.
Right.
So I'm thinking of that. And also, maybe an important skill is knowing, like, again, I'm repeating myself maybe a bit of like, what is it that I want? Like, why private practice? What is it that I'm hoping for? Maybe it might not happen in 2 months, but if I can think ahead a year, 3 years, 10 years, like what are my goals for wanting to pursue private practice? Because it does take effort to build, and there has to be some kind of goalpost to keep us motivated of like, well, I'm doing this hard work now because I want to get to this place. And then you can reverse engineer it backwards. Okay, if this is what I'm hoping for in a year, okay, what are the steps I need to do now to help me move towards that? And your goal in a year might be totally different than, therapist Joe Schmo next to you who's building a totally different practice. And that can kind of help you stick with your individualized goals.
Yeah. And also during the year, those goals can change.
Oh, yeah. They will. They will.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I love that. And I think people have heard me say, and it's, you just said the same thing. I think it's really important that a person get in touch with what is their why behind their private practice. I mean, what is it that what is it that brought them to it? What is it that you're wanting to get from it? And, I think a lot of it is, for most people, private practice offers a lifestyle for people that gives a lot of flexibility and also just earning potential that they might not reach working for somebody else. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well,
yeah. those are the reasons
well,
why I started private practice. And
yes.
freedom to do, if I want to do it part-time and do something else like private practice skills, or
Hmm.
in seasons just spending more time being a mom, there's flexibility to do that too. It's
Sure.
a lovely gift.
Yes, yes. Well, Marie, I've got to be respectful of your time. And yeah, so are there any parting thoughts that you have just around the things that we've talked about so
Oh,
far?
goodness. I guess maybe just if anyone feels like, or they're wondering if, is what I'm dealing with potentially burnout, like instead of just telling yourself you're going to power through, like, could you please ask someone to take a look at things with you? And I'm not going to tell you who the
Hmm.
someone needs to be, but someone you feel safe with, sort of say, okay,
Hmm.
I'm not feeling great. Can we really just evaluate what's going on? What might be contributing to how I'm doing right now? And like
Hmm.
gently and kindly take a look at what might be contributing before you just sort of decide, like, I guess I just have to keep going.
Right,
'Cause we
right.
know that doesn't work long term.
Yes,
So those are
right, right.
those are my gentle words
Yeah,
of encouragement. Hopefully it's
sure,
encouraging.
sure. Well, Marie, if people want to connect with you, tell them how they can do that.
Yeah, I mean, the best place to find me is always on YouTube. If you head over to YouTube and type in private practice skills, you'll find me over there. And I hope to see some of y'all there.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, we'll have links in the show notes and the show summary for folks. And Marie, I hope we can have another conversation again here in the near
Yes.
future.
Thank you so much for having me. This is a lovely time.
Well, I'm grateful to Marie for being on the podcast, and do check out her things. As I mentioned, you'll find links for her things in the show notes and the show summary, and finding out about the different skills that she's working on helping people learn. And she's another great person to connect with, as far as finding someone to support you in this journey, as she talked about there at the end of our interview. It's so important to find those trusted colleagues and those people that you can, help you through the journey, as I don't know any other way to say it. But be sure and check her out. And also love for you to find out more about some of the ways in which I support people. And you can go over to practiceoftherapy.com and find out more about that. And something I failed to mention at the beginning of the podcast is, this is episode number 389. And it's hard to believe that we're going to be coming up on our 400th episode before too long. And we're going to do some special things, and you're going to see some new stuff coming from the practice of therapy. So I'll just leave it at that. Keep your anticipation up around those things. But do take time to follow us and subscribe to the podcast wherever you might be listening to it. And we'll be back again next week for another episode of the Practice of Therapy podcast. You've been listening to the Practice of Therapy podcast with Gordon Brewer, part of the Psychcraft network of podcasts. You can find out more about the other great podcasts in the network by visiting psychcraftnetwork.com. And if you haven't done so already, please visit us at practiceoftherapy.com and get your free private practice startup guide, along with a lot of other great resources and webinars and free things just by visiting. Also, be sure to follow us wherever you might be listening to your podcasts. This podcast is intended to be educational in purpose and is not intended to give legal, accounting, or counseling advice. If you need a professional, find the right person for that.
DMV Roofers and Remodelers. Prepare to take your skills and profits to new heights. Introducing Velux Pro Partner Academy mobile training courses. Get on-site Velux skylight installation training. Plus, learn how to make product recommendations and close deals with confidence. It's free to enroll, and after a few hours of training, your team will be equipped to capture a whole new market for skylight installations and replacements. Register for Velux Pro Partner Academy today at veluxusa.com/pro.